there. We can change the panel as well. Looks like it locked up a little bit. There we go. We can make the panel entirely transparent if we want. We can make it kind of transparent, or we can make it not transparent at all. This really depends on the theme we're going to be using. If we go back to Overview, we're going to come down to Appearance and select Theme. Our theme doesn't look like it worked, so let's have a look. I'm going to go up to my home directory, the themes, see, there we go. Here's the problem. So in each one of these, we need to take the directory and pull it back to themes. So in the theme dark, I'm going to pull that up to themes. It's not working. Hold on, this is very sensitive. Let me try that again. Once we see that, we should be good to drop it. There we go. Go into the main theme file, drop it right there. All right. Now, we do actually have to restart Unity Tweak Tool. Still not picking it up. Cool. So we're going to go to Computer, User, Share, Applications, way down to the bottom, launch Unity Tweak Tool. Select Theme. Now we can select the theme that we want to use. There we go. This is actually broken, it appears. See the window. You can see a bit of fray right there. Looks like it is indeed broken. So this is one of those broken themes I was talking about. It's not too broken though. You really can't notice. And then over in Icons, we're going to select the icon theme that we also just downloaded, which was Masala. We can go over to cursor as well. Change it to a black cursor. Let's go to window controls. This doesn't work. I've noticed this and it hasn't been fixed yet. It's going to keep the window controls up here. I'm going to come back to the panel settings because it's very transparent at this point. Oh, that looks nice. Oh, it's supposed to be entirely transparent. Set it like that. That looks all right. There we go. So we have a briefly customized version of Ubuntu. Feel free to explore a little more and do any configurations that you want to do. In the next video, we're going to be discussing desktop environments. So this is Unity, albeit a slightly customized version of Unity. In the next video, we're going to be installing Cinnamon and maybe a few others. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Hey guys, thanks for joining me. Today we're going to be installing Ubuntu alongside our Windows installation on our actual hard drive. So you're going to need a few things for this. First, you're going to need a USB disk drive. I recommend 8 gigabytes or larger. And you also need a program called UNetBootin. So to get that program, open a web browser and type in unetbootin.sourceforge.net. And when you get to this page, download the Windows version. And I'm going to select Open.
Now, while this is downloading, I want you to plug your USB disk drive in, and once it's in, right-click on your Start menu icon. This should be the same for every version of Windows since Windows XP. When you right-click it, you should get a menu, and there should be disk management in that menu. So click on that, and we're going to format our USB drive in order to be able to install the ISO image of Ubuntu on it, which we downloaded in the first video. So in the disk management screen, you're going to see a lot of things. Actually, you're probably only going to see a few things because you haven't yet done any formatting to your hard drive. So what you should see is a few smaller partitions at the beginning of your hard disk, and then a very large C drive, which should be NTFS. That's your Windows partition. Mine have already got some partitions here from previous Ubuntu installations. We're not going to worry about the disk 0 right now because that's not what we're focusing on. First, we need to find our USB stick. You can usually find it by the size of the device, and right-click on it and click Format. And you can name it anything you like. The important thing is that the file system must be FAT32 in order to boot off of the USB stick. So make sure that's selected. Leave everything else, and I recommend checking this perform a quick format. Otherwise, it's going to take a while. So leave that checked. Okay. Now it's going to format, and it should happen pretty quickly. And then what we're going to do is, once it's done, you actually need to unplug it. So remove it from your USB port. And then put it back in. And what this is going to do is it's going to mount it so that UNetbootin can see it, and so we can install on there. Now I got a notification here that said it's the F drive, so it's already selected, so I don't need to do anything here. I need to select disk image because we're going to specify the ISO image that we're going to burn to this USB disk drive. So hit this button over here and browse to the file that you want to install. So mine is in Downloads, Ubuntu. And this is the same ISO image we downloaded in the first video. It's the same one that we installed in VirtualBox, and we're going to be using it now as well. So select it and hit open. Now, if your drive is blank because you took the disk, the USB disk out and then put it back in, all you have to do is toggle this over to hard disk and then back to USB drive. It should find it. You should have a list here. Make sure you choose the appropriate one and then hit OK. Now it's going to start the burning process onto the USB disk, and this is going to take a little bit. It should take 5 minutes or so. I will be back when mine has successfully burned. So when it completes, you should see this screen, and it's going to prompt you to reboot now or exit. Now it's important that you do one thing before you reboot your computer. Windows has a feature called Fast Startup. And that's going to interfere with your ability to access the Windows drive. So we are going to need to repartition the Windows drive, so we need access to it from Ubuntu. Now, how Fast Startup works is basically when you shut down your computer, normally your computer doesn't fully shut down. And so there's still things running, or at least a saved state. So it's like hibernation. So we need to change how that works. So what you're going to do is right-click on your battery icon and click Power Options. I'm going to go to Change Plan Settings here. And then on the bottom, click Change Advanced Power Settings. And that's not where we need to go at all. Sorry about that. Cancel it here. All right, here it is. So on the left-hand side, choose what the power button does, and then change settings that are currently unavailable. and this will allow us to change the settings down here. Now this should be checked unless you've manually turned it off already. What you want to make sure is that this is unchecked, and then hit Save Changes. So feel free to either reboot now or exit and then manually restart the computer. So when your computer's turned off, you're going to turn it on, and you're going to have to press the key to enter into the BIOS boot menu. I'm working on an HP laptop here, so my key is F9. So when you hit the power key, you're going to need to repeatedly tap this key to make sure that you get it at the right time. It's usually a small window of opportunity there to get it. So I'm going to just tap on the F9 key, and I'll be presented with this. You should have something similar. Now, if you're on an EFI system, that's great. Make sure you choose the USB drive UEFI and hit enter. So you're going to use your up and down key and then hit enter when you select the correct device. And this is going to let us boot off of the hard disk. So click Try Ubuntu, and then just wait for it to start up. It should be relatively quick. And there we go. We're now booted into Ubuntu. So select the, double-click the Install Ubuntu icon on the desktop. And when it opens the installer, select your language. And when you're ready, hit Continue. You're going to want to connect to a Wi-Fi network unless you're connected through Ethernet. I've already connected to a network, so I'm not going to do this. But connect to your network so that you can download updates while installing, and you can get the most fresh packages from the repositories. And hit Continue. You're gonna see these big check marks telling us that we're all good to go. You're also going to want to check download updates while installing, and also install third-party software. And I've already got these checked. You want to make sure they're checked. If they're not checked, check them. You don't need to install third-party software. All this allows is for playing MP3 files and other proprietary file types. So when you're ready here, hit Continue. And this next bit is going to take a little bit because it's scanning our hard drive. So when you see this screen, it's going to prompt you to install Ubuntu alongside Windows. We're not going to do that. We're going to manage the partitions by ourselves manually, and that's going to give us a little bit more control. So select something else at the bottom, and then hit Continue. Now it's going to scan the disk again, and you're going to see something entirely different here. All right, this is our Windows partition. We can tell by first it's formatted as NTFS, and also the size of the drive. This is my free space. What you're going to want to do is right-click on the NTFS file system. Hold on a second, I just got to remove this two-finger scroll. There we go, much better. This is the EFI partition. We're going to focus on the Windows partition right now. You're going to need to shrink this and in order to get the free space. So click on this and click Change down at the bottom. And you're going to just reduce the size of this. Windows does take up quite a bit of space and the applications on it, so I recommend leaving this relatively high. I've got about 500 gigabytes that I use for my Windows partition, and I find that's comfortable. So once you've done this, hit OK, and you're going to see the disk rescan, and it's going to show you that you've now got free space after your Windows partition. So we now need to set up a few partitions. So click the free space and the plus sign. And the first partition we're going to be creating is a swap area, which acts sort of like RAM, but on the hard disk. So in the size of the swap area, you're going to want to make it about double the amount of RAM that you've got. And when it refreshes here, we see our swap area we just created with the free space after it. So now we're good to create our main partition for the installation of Ubuntu. So make sure you use ext4 journaling file system and set the mount point to a / and hit OK. And basically the / just means the entire operating system, the home directories, applications, configurations, they're all going to be installed to this partition. Now, Linux gives us a little bit more flexibility that we're not going to really go in depth with right now, but you are able to create two different partitions, one for the / the main partition, and then you can also create another one, set the mount point to / home, and that's going to mean that all your user directories are stored on that partition. And this makes sense for upgrading and installing different versions of Linux because the home directory will always stay intact. You won't need to format it every time you install Linux, and you can install Linux over the root partition. So now that we're set up here, we're basically good to go. The device for the bootloader is important. If you're not running an EFI system, you need to leave this to dev/SDA. And what that means is that the bootloader is going to be written to the very first sectors of the hard disk, which is where non-EFI hard drives store their bootloaders with Windows. So it will replace the Windows partition or the Windows bootloader and replace it with grub, which is the Linux bootloader, but it will also give you an option through that installation of the bootloader to boot into Windows. Every time you boot up your computer, you're going to see boot into Linux or boot into Windows. All right, now I'm working with an EFI hard disk, and hopefully you are too. Every computer released in the last few years are now EFI. And EFI is great. It's a way where you can better manage dual and tri booting different installations or operating systems on your hard disk. And what this does is if you've got an EFI partition, as you can notice, mine selected in the area above is SDA2, but the type is EFI, and system says Windows Boot Manager. All right. Where we're using an EFI disk, we are going to install the EFI files for the bootloader on the existing EFI partition, which is SDA2. So when we're already here, you can now click Install Now. It's going to tell you that it's going to make these changes and they're going to be permanent, and you may lose data if you've done something wrong. So please make sure you do this all correctly. It will leave your Windows partition intact because you're not formatting it, you're just shrinking it, and you're creating a couple new partitions. So when you review these changes, hit continue, and it's going to install the operating system now to our hard disk. And the installation procedure is exactly the same as it was in VirtualBox. So you're going to choose your location or your time zone first. So here we're going to select our keyboard layout. I am English US keyboard layout. So I'm just going to leave it and hit continue. And here we're going to create our user account. So I'm going to name my computer Voltron and username and password. And you do have a few options also to log in automatically or require your password. You can set this however you want. I like to require my password to log in. So just hit continue, and now you're presented with this beautiful slideshow of everything Ubuntu can do. Not everything, but a few things. And we're going to dive into more of these things in the future. But for right now, I'm going to pause this recording and I'll be back after it installs because it does take about 10 to 15 minutes. So when it's done, you should see a prompt like this, and it should tell you that the installation has been a success and you're now free to either continue testing on the USB drive or restart now. You can do whatever you'd like. Just if you're going to continue testing, the way you reboot is in the top right-hand corner. Select the gear icon and then select shutdown. Hey guys, thanks for joining me. In this video, we're finally going to get to the command line, and I'm really excited about that because this is probably the key aspect to Linux that you're going to need to learn. It's great to have a bit of background knowledge and how to install the system, but those are the very small and insignificant in comparison to how much you'll be working with the command line. So to open up the command line, we use a program called Terminal, and you can access this in the Applications menu by typing Terminal, or you can hit Control Alt and T on your keyboard, and it will launch Terminal. So here is Terminal, and we're going to talk about just a few commands today. The first one is going to be pwd, and what pwd does is it prints working directory. So if I type it here, it's going to list the current directory that I'm in, which is /home/nic. This is my user directory. This is the default location that you'll be in. The second command that we need to talk about is cd, or change directory. So this allows us to basically change which working directory we're in. Now, I can type user share, for instance. That's going to take me to the user share directory, and I'm going to show you guys here in the file manager what this looks like. If I click computer here, it's going to take me to the root, signified by a /. So when you're changing directory, if the first character after cd is a /, that means it's going to be an absolute path from the beginning of the hard disk, or from the root directory. So here I could change directory into sbin, or I could cd into home again. And in home, we've got a directory called nic. So how to change directory with a relative path is you just omit the /, and this will basically tell it to change directory from whatever directory I'm in to the next level, which is nic, and I end up here. So again, you can change directory into an absolute path by setting the / to the first character, and we can see this is where I'm in. And then you can change directory with a relative path by not putting the /. Now additionally, another symbol in Linux is a period and a /. And what these two character combinations mean is in the current directory. So if I remove lib here, if I just change directory into the current directory that I'm in, I will stay in the same directory. Now I can type cd lib with the period and /, and that's going to send me into the current directory's next level directory called lib. So I'm going to cd back into home/nic. Now I could type it out like this, and this is about 10 characters, but let's say I was really lazy. You can use the tilde. And that's basically, that's the key to the left of the number 1 key on the top of your keyboard. You need to hold shift and press that. It's the key directly under the escape key. This is a tilde, and this basically means home. So
it's going to take you to your home directory, which is unique for each user. For instance, my home directory, as we can see up here at the top, is /home/Nick, because this is my username. So we can use this a bit and put a different spin on it. Let's say I'm in user/share/applications. Where I am right now is in this directory. We can type pwd to see the directory that we're in. If I want to go directly to home/Nick, I can type cd tilde. But if I want to go to home/Nick/documents, I can still use the tilde followed by a / followed by documents. And this is going to put me into home/Nick/documents. Now this is all fun, but what's the point of navigating a file system if you really can't do anything? And so that's our next command that we're going to learn. So I'm going to change directory to home, to my home directory. Let's say you want to go up a level. So remember how changing directory with // means current directory. If you put 2 periods and a /, that means 1 level up. So the parent directory. So right now I'm in home/Nick. If I type cd // and hit enter, it's going to put me into the home directory. I can type pwd and see that I'm in home. So again, cd tilde is going to move you to your home directory. // means current directory, so you can type a relative path from that. / means the root of the directory, and this means that you're going to be giving the cd command a very absolute path. So I can type / user share, as this is a file path directly from the root of the hard disk. And // means go up 1 level. So I'm going to change directory into my home directory. And now the next command we're going to use is ls. And what that does is it lists the contents of whatever directory you're in. So here's my home directory. Here's what it looks like in the files and folders in it. If I type pwd to make sure I'm in my home directory, I can type ls, and that's going to list all of the contents of this directory in alphabetical order. Now, ls is a big command, and there's many options that you can throw into it, but we're going to focus on a few. File permissions in Linux are very important. They define who can do what to what file. So for instance, the a.out file that you see there is a binary file from a C++ program that I wrote. That belongs to me. That means I can run it. How do we know that belongs to me? We can use the ls command, separated by a space, a dash, and the letter L. Now, the -L argument that we're passing it means that we're going to list it in a long way, so we're going to get some more information. The left column is the permissions of a file. So owner, user, group. We're not going to get into permissions right now, but ls-l does list them. It lists the owner's user account and also the corresponding group. So when you create a user in Linux, it also creates a group, at least during the main installation, and the group's name is the same as the username.
And it also shows the date modified and stuff. Now, what if we actually wanted to list a directory based on some other things? So if we wanted to list it in reverse order, let's say, we can type ls-r, and it's going to list it in reverse alphabetical order. If we want to define file types when we list, we can type ls-p. And we see that a directory is followed by the /. Now, also there are color codings, so we can tell that directories are blue and other files are generally white. The a.out is a binary file, and so it's green. We can also sort based on file size. And now, what we've been doing so far is listing contents of the current directory we're in. Now, that's cool, because if I wanted to see every file that was in applications directory, I would change directory to user share applications, and once there, I would type ls. And this is going to show me all of the files and directories within this path. Now, this works, but let's say I didn't want to leave my home directory to list the applications directory. You can actually pass an argument after ls of the path that you want to list, and it will do it. Now, here's a bonus command for the terminal. It's clear. And what that does is it makes terminal a little less cluttered. So again, if I wanted to list files in home/documents, I can do that. Let's say I wanted to list them in reverse order. I can do that. So now you see that you can start stringing commands together, or at least the ls command. And if you're ever really lazy and you don't want to type the entire ls, you can just type L. So thanks for watching this video with me. We're going to recap here. We type cd to change into a directory. We type pwd to print the current directory that we're in, and we type ls to list all the contents of that directory. And there's a lot of options for ls. I've shown you a few. If you want more information, you can actually type ls --help. And this is going to provide you with all of the options that you can run with the command, as well as an explanation of what they do. So thanks for watching this video. In the next video, we're going to be going through some more command line stuff. We're going to be doing command line for a little bit. Hey guys, thanks for joining me again. And in this video, we're going to be talking about administrator privileges in the terminal. So I mentioned briefly in the previous video about file permissions, and we really didn't jump in. And so I've created a file in a location that I don't have access to. The file I've created is it's at etc, it's in the etc directory, and it's just called file. So if I change directory into etc and then type L, we can scroll here. It's alphabetical, and so we can see file right here. That's the file I created. Let's say I want to edit it. And we're going to be going into Nano a lot in the future, but right now I'm going to be using Nano, and in order to edit this file. It's a terminal application for text editing. So I'm going to type nano and then in the current directory open file. And this is going to open this file that I've written, which is great. I can view it. But what happens when I try to write to it, I'm going to hit Control O, which is the command to save this file, and I'm going to type enter. And it's going to give me an error warning that I don't have permission to do this. And so if I click Control X, it's going to ask me if I want to save changes, so I'm going to say no because I can't. Well, then how do we edit that file that I've just created? We need to use administrative privileges in order to be able to edit that file. Now there's two ways to do this. The first one is to type sudo before the command. And what this means is super user do. It's an abbreviation. Super user is a term in Linux that identifies your privilege level. So super user do allows you to make changes to files and perform administrative tasks for this one command. So if I type sudo nano file, that will let me edit the file. So now I can type test343, hit Control O, and then enter, and we see a success message, wrote 2 lines. So I can now exit this, and it has been saved. Now, what if I don't want to retype the entire command? So if I type nano file, try to write to it, it will fail because permissions denied. I haven't run this specific command as sudo. So I'm going to exit. What you actually need to do is type sudo and 2 exclamation marks. So the 2 exclamation marks basically mean run the previous command. So by prepending that with the term sudo, it will rerun the previous command as sudo. What if you have a lot of things to do and you don't want to write sudo before every single command? So now, what if you have a lot of things to do and you don't want to type sudo in front of every single command? You could actually do this, and that's the su command. And what this means is switch user. So generally, you type switch user, or su, followed by the name of the user account you want to switch to. What we're going to do is type sudo su. And this is going to change us to the root account. And as you can see, the name prepending the computer's name, so this is the computer name, and this is the name of the current user I'm acting as, which is root. And the root user has 100% control of everything. So now I can type nano file and add a new line. Control O and Control X to close it. Now, when I want to switch back over to my user account, I'll type su space nick. And that's going to get me back into my user account. So basically, if you get a permission error running a command, you might need to run that command as sudo. For instance, if you're editing files in any directory other than your home directory, you're not going to have permission to those files. And we'll go over in the future how to get permission to files. But for right now, for all intents and purposes, these instances is when you would run your command prepended with sudo. If you have a lot of these commands to run and you don't want to type sudo before every command, just type sudo space su. So thank you guys for watching this video. We're going to be continuing command line in the next video as well. And again, we're going to be doing it for quite a while, so I hope you guys are enjoying this. Hey guys, thanks for joining me again. In this video, we're going to be going over the package manager of Ubuntu, or how to manage the packages that you have installed or that you want to install. So how we do this is through a program called apt-get. So in terminal, if you type apt-get, that is the program that we are going to use to install applications. If you follow this with the term install, this is the action that we want apt-get to perform. And then the file that we want this action performed on is, for this video, going to be Bluefish, which is a text editor that I don't want installed, but for the purpose of this video, I'm going to install it. Now, if you hit enter, you're going to notice it's going to tell you that you do not have permission to use that program. So again, this is where sudo comes into play. So sudo bang bang, hit enter. Then it's going to show us that, well, for me, for this system, it says these weren't automatically installed and we don't need them. Down here we see the following extra packages will be installed, and it's going to install Bluefish data and Bluefish plugins, which are two different packages that Bluefish needs. And it will also tell us how much will be downloaded and how much space will be used on the disk after the application is installed. So we're going to type Y for yes and hit enter. Now it's going to connect to the repositories of Ubuntu. So while it does that, I'm going to explain what that means. So Ubuntu has repositories set up that have indexes and package files, and it has indexes of those package files. So this allows us to run the command apt-get and install packages from the repositories. Now there are some programs that aren't in the repositories, and we'll go over those in a moment. For the sake of this specific action, Bluefish is in the repositories, and I knew the name of the package that I wanted to install before I ran the command. So I could just type sudo apt-get install Bluefish, and this installs Bluefish to my computer. And when this completes, I can now hit the super key and type in Bluefish. It hasn't found it yet. I forgot there is a bug with this version of Ubuntu where the dash isn't always updated. If I type in Bluefish from the terminal, we can see that I've got Bluefish installed. So that's how you install programs. Now, let's say we want to remove a program. We do that in a very similar way. I'm going to type sudo apt-get remove Bluefish. So with this command, we're using the program apt-get. The action we're performing is remove, and the action is the package that action is performed on is Bluefish. I'm going to type Y for yes. I do want to uninstall this. And it's going to uninstall the package. What if we want to install a program and we're not sure of the exact name of it? So let's say we want to search through the repository and we're looking for something specific. What we'll do is type apt-cache search, and then the program we want, followed by an asterisk. And this means it's going to find anything that has the word Bluefish in it. I can type apt-cache search GIMP. And it's returning a lot of stuff. Now, we can find it in here, GIMP. Let's say we want to see if we've got something installed. We're going to use apt cache again. We're going to type policy as the action, and then GIMP. We see that this is the version we have installed, 2.8.14, and the official repositories contain this version, 2.8.14, which means you can see here we've installed GIMP through the repositories. Now additionally, you could go to GIMP's website, I believe it's gimp.org, and you could download an installer file from there. So if you're on an older version of Ubuntu that doesn't have version 2.8 of GIMP in the repositories, you can actually manually install that package file. And we're going to go over that in a moment. So if I type apt-cache policy bluefish, which I've just removed, we'll see that we have none installed, but we can install version 2.2 from the official repositories. What if we want to install a package that is not in the repositories? So if I type apt-cache search Chrome, I'll see a lot of Chrome, but I'm not seeing a package called Chrome. I see Chromium Browser. That's the open source version of Chrome, and we can install that by typing sudo apt-get install Chromium Browser. But let's say I want the actual Google Chrome. It's not under Chrome. It's not under Google Chrome either. We're going to see that it wasn't able to access that package. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up Firefox, because that's the browser you're going to have pre-installed on Ubuntu. You are going to have Firefox. It doesn't come with another browser pre-installed. However, you can install other web browsers. Now, if I wanted to install Midori, which is a web browser, I can check, is there a version that I can install through the repositories? And there is. I don't want to use Midori though, I want to use Chrome. So what we're going to do is go to chrome.google.com, and when the page loads, it's going to allow us to download Chrome. So I'm going to go to download for personal computers. And this has automatically picked up that we're on Linux. So if you click download Chrome, it's going to give you 4 options. A 32-bit .deb file, a 64-bit .deb file, and then also 32 and 64-bit RPM files. On Linux, you're not going to be using RPM files. That is the package manager for Red Hat, and so that's a different Linux version altogether. With Debian Ubuntu distributions, and in the first or second video I explained how Ubuntu was forked from Debian. So Ubuntu uses the same package manager as Debian, which is .deb files, or apt package manager. So apt package manager works with .deb files. So we're going to download the 64-bit deb file because we're working on a 64-bit system and a 64-bit installation. We're going to click that accept button, and I'm going to save the file. Now, once the download completes, we can change directory into our home downloads directory. We can use the ls command to see this file. And so how we're going to install it, I mean, you could open up the file manager, come into the downloads folder and double click this, and it's going to open it up with Software Center, which is Ubuntu's graphical package manager app. But we're not going to do that because we're focusing on command line. So how you install it from command line is by running the following command. So we're going to go sudo dpkg-i for install, and then we're going to give it the file path. Now we could go absolute and type home .NIC, downloads. We're not going to do that because that gets really old and boring really quick. We're going to type in the current directory, look for Google-Chrome-stable _ current _ AMD64.deb and hit enter. And it's going to unpack this Debian package, and it's going to install Chrome. And again, it's not going to pick up the application there, but we can type Chrome, I believe. No? What about Google Chrome? There we go. And then we can launch Chrome because it is installed. Now, what we can do with the package manager, it doesn't only allow us to install and remove programs, it allows us to keep things updated. So let's say that a new package version of one of our applications has been pushed to the repositories. We can actually type sudo apt-get upgrade. And this is going to upgrade any packages that have new versions in the repositories, and we have older versions than that on our system. So we're going to hit enter. And a little note on sudo is that when you run it once, I believe in that session in the terminal, you don't have to put your password in every time, just the first time. So here we see that we have 16 kilobytes of upgrades to do. So let's go look at that. So it looks like my KDE installation is upgradable. Good stuff. So I'm going to type Y and hit enter. Now it's going to upgrade these existing packages. So we covered a lot in this video. I want to just take a couple minutes here at the end of the video and go over what we learned. So basically, the package manager of Ubuntu and Debian-based distributions is aptitude. And we use that through a program called apt-get. Now, when we use apt-get, we can give it specific actions to carry out, like installing programs and removing them. We can also add repositories, which we're going to go over in the future, but we can add repositories that aren't the official Ubuntu repositories, and that will give us access to more applications. We can use the apt-cache program to search through available applications and to check the installed versions against new versions in the repositories, and we can see programs that we've already got installed by using the policy action in the apt-cache program. And we can also use dpkg application to install local .deb files. So that lets us install packages that aren't in the official Ubuntu repositories and aren't in other repositories as well. So we can manually download files, make sure the architecture is for your hardware. Make sure if you're on a 64-bit system that you're installing 64-bit applications. And also, we don't use RPM. So RPM installer files are for Fedora and Red Hat variants. So typically with Ubuntu, always with Ubuntu, we're going to use .deb files, or we're going to use the apt-get and apt-cache programs to manage our software. And then the final piece is upgrading the software. So periodically,
different package maintainers or developers will release new versions of their software into repositories, whether that is the official Ubuntu repositories or if it's third-party repositories that they manage specifically for their application that you have added to your system. And so using sudo apt-get upgrade allows us to upgrade packages that are available for upgrade. So thanks for watching this video. In the next video, we're going to be going over more command line. Hey guys, thanks for joining me again. Today in this video, we are going to be going over more command line stuff, and it's file permissions and file ownership. So the first thing we need to do in order to discuss this is to have a file that we currently don't have any permissions to. And the easiest way to do that is to type sudo nano file. What this is going to do is, as an administrator or as the root user, it's going to use nano to produce a file named file. I'm going to put .txt there so we can keep track of it. And I'm going to type read and Control O to save, hit enter and Control X. Now if I type ls-l, we see here that file.txt is owned by the user root and that user's group root. Now what we've got here are permissions, and the way these columns work is this is for the owner. The owner can read and write. Groups can only read, and public can only read. So if I want to make myself able to read and write, I've got to change this third column to match that column. And I've actually got to first share it with the group nick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a second command here called sudo ch own. And this means change ownership of a file. And then how we write this is we type the user group. So user corresponds to what we're setting this column to. Group corresponds to what we're setting this column to. So I'm going to leave it as root for the user that owns it and share it with the group nick, and then the file that we want to perform this action on. Now if I type lsl, we should see here that file.txt now is under ownership of the nick group. So we need to change this third column to write. So how we do that is use chmod, and we're going to use that as sudo to change the permissions of the file. Now 6 means it is readable and writable, 4 means it is readable, and 7 means it's a directory. We don't use that typically with single files, and we'll go over that more in a moment. So we're going to set, if I typed out the permissions in numeric values that it currently has, it would look like that. So we can see that 4 corresponds to read access, 6 corresponds to read-write access. So what we want to do to change the third column here is we're going to type sudo chmod 646 and then the file that we want to perform this action on. Now if I type ls-l, we can see that change has been made. So I can now use nano on file.txt, and I should be able to write to it, and I can't. That's because the columns, I changed the wrong column. We needed to change the second column. So I'm going to type sudo chmod 664 on file.txt. What this has done, the first 2 columns are now read, write, and the third column is just read.
So now I can write to that file. So that's neat, but let's say I want to own that file. Let's say that file was created under administrative privileges, but I want to own it forever. So I'm going to type sudo chown nick, and the file that I want to perform that on is that. Let's say I want to switch the permissions back to 644. I will retain ownership, so I'll be able to write to it, as the first column has read-write access for Nick, and that's me. So I no longer need this group column there as well. So what I'm going to type is sudo chmod 644 file.txt. If I run ls again, I can see that the permissions have been changed back so that only the owner of the file can write to it. Cool. Now I'm going to delete that file because I don't need it. So to delete a single file, all you'll do is type rm and then the file name. And if I list again, we do not have a file.txt. Let's create a directory. And I'm going to create it as administrator. So sudo mkdir, which means make directory, and I'm going to name it my dir. And we can see here that my directory has been created. And we can see the permissions on this. It's owned by root. Now, what this means is it's readable, writable, and executable. This means that anybody else can read and execute it. So I can change directory into my dir. This is executing it. So I've just allowed myself to execute that, and that allows me to go into it. Now, let's say I wanted to go back up a directory and use this. Let's create a file actually in that directory. So I'm going to type sudo nano file.txt. Actually, I got to put that in my dir. And the way we do that